everyone. So I am almost done filming all of the videos for track 3, but in real time, I am onboarding and hiring a new W-2 employee. And it dawned on me, now that I live in a new state, I'm not in Maryland, I'm in North Carolina, that I had no idea how to onboard a clinician, and the internet was helpful to some degrees, but then I had to double check things with my accountants. I was like, oh, I should definitely make a lesson specifically on W-2, because even though I have predominantly done 1099 contractors for clinicians, we are likely going to hire W-2 employees at some point, whether it's your practice manager or maybe someone to do billing, or maybe you're going to be doing a hybrid model of 1099 contractors and W-2 employees, or simply W-2 employee clinicians. Either way, for me, every time I go through the W-2 process, it feels like my brain is going to explode because I don't have a lesson like this. And so I wanted to make it for you, so hopefully your brain will not explode. We talked about this in the last lesson, but as a reminder, you have to be some kind of legit business. I don't know how else to say that. If you're going to hire employees, which means being a sole proprietor is a great way to have an individual private practice if it's just you with very limited overhead or anything you have to deal with. But if you want employees, you cannot be a sole proprietor. And so that looks like an LLC, PLLC, LLC S Corp, etc. So just double checking that your business structure is in place. So I'm going to talk you through a little bit about how I just onboarded our new practice operations manager. Lorraine, who's going to be under Sarah, who was our practice manager, who's now going to be the director of clinical operations. We're doing a whole thing here, which is really exciting and also sometimes scary. I think it's just scary, and it's I have an itch that I'm just going to itch in the middle of this video. It's scary because it's unknown, and for me, there was a lot of resistance and apprehension about expanding because I don't want to lose our core values of the company, and it feels really aligned and it feels really manageable. And it was brought to my attention that one way to keep it manageable while continuing to grow is hire someone else. And I was like, oh, but I don't know how to do that. And they were like, okay. So I went into a deep dive and I looked it up, and basically here's how the whole process went. So when you hire a W-2 employee, you have to provide them with an offer letter. And I had our lawyer overlook the offer letter, which I had copied and pasted from the last offer letter that he did. And he changed everything up. He was like, nope, you can't say this, can't do this. And I was like, I'm literally hiring a friend of mine, one of my best friends, which there's a lot there. And I think if you can have transparency and communication and boundaries and all that, it's doable. If you can't have those things, it's not doable. So anyway, he redid the whole offer letter. So I gave that to her. And then I was like, how else? What else do I have to do? Because with a 1099, they sign their contract and they're good to go. With a W-2, there's all these forms. So there's the form I-9, which they sign the first part, and then you have to fill in the part with their social security card or driver's license or passport. And it's basically employment eligibility or verification in the United States. You have to do it. I'm not going to lie. Sarah's been a W-2 for almost a year, and I literally just did it with her because I didn't realize that was a thing. Again, learning by doing. With Lorraine, I read that you have to do it within 3 business days of hiring them. So I was like, oh, we should do this. So Form I-9, you can find a blank one online. Form W-4, so that's the federal income tax withholding. Now, I don't understand any of this stuff. However, if you're using a payroll platform like QuickBooks, when you add a new employee to QuickBooks, it sends them their W-4 to fill out. And so again, QuickBooks is not free. I don't know how some of the free payroll, I think there's a lesson later on about payroll. I don't know what free payroll systems offer in terms of W-2 forms and all that. But what I do know is that QuickBooks integrates it all. And so another thing that QuickBooks integrates is a 401k platform called Guideline. Now, depending on where you live and what the laws are, you as a W-2, at least this is what I was told, and it might vary state to state, you need to set up a 401k. You get to decide if you're doing employer matching, right? Which I think we all should do, but that's just me. But I would look more into the 401k piece. So for me, QuickBooks sends the W-4, it integrates with a 401k, it sends an invite to the W-2 employee to fill out all of their like tax withholding stuff, which is great. And then like when they fill out their I-9 form, I can upload it to QuickBooks in their documents section. So it's there forever, protected. Let's see. So you definitely, if they're a therapist, will need, of course, their professional license. They need their own malpractice insurance, stuff like that. With direct deposit, so this all depends on how you want to do payroll. Again, there's a whole lesson on payroll. I think direct deposit is something we should all be offering so that they don't have to go mobile upload or deposit checks. Like that's crazy. And so again, QuickBooks offers that. I am not paid by QuickBooks. I am not a brand ambassador. They don't even know that I'm part of QuickBooks, but I'm just going to talk about the platforms that I use and be really transparent about that. Oh, this section is already 4 minutes. It's never going to upload. So here's the thing I also didn't know you had to do. So with W-2 employees, you have to report the new hire to the state. When I learned this, I was like, what? And so again, I don't know what state you're in. For Maryland, there was like if you look up, if you literally just Google report new W-2 hire, report new hire state of Maryland, you will register for a provider portal or whatever, not provider, just like an account, and you can submit that you hired someone. Same thing for North Carolina. And so it's a completely different platform. It's a completely different website, but you just Google in your state, report new hire. And you usually have to create an account and then you can report the new hire, including the hire date, and then it'll ask for other information. So that's something I didn't know you had to do until I learned by not doing it and then doing it. So here's another thing is, most states require that you have workers' comp, so workers' compensation for your W-2, like it's a law. And so Google sign up for, or like employer, your state, workers' comp. I had to register for workers' comp with some Maryland website, and then they gave me like a specific ID that I needed to then put into QuickBooks because QuickBooks needs your workers' comp ID and your tax withholding ID. And so again, if you just Google like requirements in my state to hire a W-2 employee, you will find a list and it will guide you to where you need to go. I would love to provide you with all of the websites and URLs that you need to do these things, but there are 51 states. Here's a question. Are there 50 states or 51 states? And why don't I know that? So going back to the offer letter, it's not a contract, it's an offer letter, and be really clear about what the requirements are in your state. So like I think it's North Carolina, maybe Maryland, honestly, I don't even know anymore. There's a Wage Transparency Act. And so you need to say, if it's their salary, your salary is this much, which means each biweekly paycheck will be this much before taxes and whatever. And so just be sure to look up, if you're not working with a lawyer, like what are the legal requirements in my state that I need to put in an offer letter to hire a W-2 employee, because it's different state to state. Like I said, I copy and pasted the offer letter that my lawyer had written for Sarah, who lives in Maryland. But when I was using it for Lorraine, who lives in North Carolina, he was like, it has to be different. And I was like, oh, and we changed the entire thing. So even if you're hiring someone that you know personally, it's important to have all this stuff, just like legal copaesthetic. So that's that about the offer letter. There was something else that I wanted to say. Oh yeah, workers' comp and withholding account number. So I'm going to pull up my notes app because this is where I literally have a note on my phone/computer. And I think it's just called like W-2 stuff. W-2 in NC and then W-2 information. So there's something called an NAICS number, which is a good classification code to have. And it's the North American Industry Classification System. I'm literally looking this up on my notes app because there was something that had to do with W-2, and I think it was in QuickBooks, where they said, what's your NAICS code? And I was like, ugh. So I looked it up. Now my NAICS number, which is probably your number, is 621330. I'm just going to look that up in real time what that is. Offices of Mental Health Practitioners. Yeah, so that's us. Their business is run by independent mental health practitioners, but not physicians. We can operate our own independent offices and group practices. Yeah, so I'll put that number in there, the NAICS 6213330. So that's one thing. There's also the SDAT number. Hold on. I'm looking this all up as I go because this is how I feel about W-2. An SDAT number is a unique identifier, issued by the Maryland Department of Assessment and Taxation. It's not the same as your tax ID. So this is specifically for Maryland business owners. Again, look up in your state if you need something like this. And how you get it is you register with the Department of Assessment and Taxation. And so look up your state Department of Assessment and Taxation. Pause this video if you have to write this down, but I'll put it in there. Because you might need, it won't be called an SDAT, but there's also a department ID number, which is the exact same thing I just said. You need to know the date of incorporation of your business and the date of formation of your business. Now, this is for when I became an employee of my own business as an LLC S Corp for tax shielding purposes. If you are a Maryland resident, you're going to use Maryland Tax Connect. Your state, if you're not in Maryland, likely has a similar thing, and that's where you're going to register for your withholding number or your withholding CRN. Couldn't even tell you what that means still, but I know that it's important. And so I wrote down like all my password. Workers' comp is going to be a policy number, a carrier, a term. So you want all that. And so what I did is I wrote down in this note the logins, like, okay, for withholding, tax withholding IDs, I go to this website. For my workers' comp, I go to this site. For UI, which is unemployment insurance, I go to this site. And so again, I know this might actually feel a little overwhelming because I'm just saying a lot of things. I'll put it all in the lesson and just know that each state is different. And the point I wanted to make with this video is that each state has different requirements, but hiring a W-2 employee is generally just very different than hiring a 1099 contractor, right? We have to report the new hire. We have to get all these interesting numbers and keep them and setting them up in QuickBooks and setting up the 401k and thinking about benefits. And it's great once you do it. And it does get easier. It does get easier, maybe. I think it also gets easier figuring out what you need to Google, honestly, because I don't remember any of this stuff, but it's just knowing, I can just Google this. I can just Google this. Obviously, with a 1099 contractor, they sign a contract, you onboard them, and they're good to go. So with a W-2, after you do all those things, and then you onboard them, that's it. You onboard them. We have a whole lesson about onboarding checklists. And keep, with compliance, you want to keep all the documents that you have. If you are going to, maybe fire them at some point, like you want to document infractions. You want to document that you've met with them. You just always want to document everything. And then I did some common questions, like I didn't even know if I needed an I-9. You always need an I-9 everywhere. I learned that the hard way. Okay. So yeah, hiring a W-2 clinician, it's a lot until it's not. And maybe this didn't give you any anxiety. If this confused you more and gave you more anxiety, let me know. Maybe I'll redo this video one day and act like it's a lot simpler. But I do think bringing the humanity of like, I have no idea what any of these things mean, but I'm just going to Google it and do the next thing is more realistic than being like, hello, to hire a W-2 employee, do this. What? I have no idea. You probably have no idea. If you do have an idea, because you're like an accountant or a lawyer and you're watching this video and you're concerned, you shouldn't be watching this video. It's not for you. Okay. Anyway, have a great day.